Hello everyone and welcome back yet again to another edition of the GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast, brought to you as always by the GSMC Sports Network. My name is Christopher Shepard. Thank you all for tuning into today's show. We should have a great show ahead for you today. I'm going to do a general prop bet preview for Sunday's slate of games. I got you covered yesterday. If you did not check that out for Thursday Night Football, I wish you the best watching experience for that game. And then I also have you covered for some college football action. A big week in terms of college football for that kind of area. And then, of course, I round out my positional rankings with my defense and special teams rankings for this upcoming week. I give you an injury update, and then, last but not least, I have a new tradition on my show, Chris's Picks, where I pick 4 or 5 games from the week in terms of my betting perspective on them. But before we get into any of that, I do want to remind you to consider liking, following, and subscribing to the show and the network as a whole if you feel so inclined. It is greatly appreciated by all involved with the show and the network, especially me and my fellow podcasters. Go check them out as well. But also, if you want to contribute to the show more outright while it is going on, you can make yourselves available to the Super Chat, Super Things, and Super Stickers features here on YouTube. You can press that $sign, leave a comment, and it will pop up on my screen, and I will be able to read it aloud. I definitely want your opinion throughout the show. It just makes it so much better, makes the network so much better, and is greatly appreciated by all in the network as well. But without further ado, let's jump right into today's show, starting off with our first segment of the day, and that will be my Week 6 prop bets. Of course, this is a popular segment on the show, kind of taking a break from Thursday night and all the action going on there. Looking ahead to the weekend, Sunday's games should be a good week in the NFL as always, and I have a good list of prop bets for you all that I think will hit, but some are a little bit of a long shot. Might be for the more ambitious of you out there. But without further ado, let's jump right into the first one. Let's start off with a pretty simple one, but based off of his heroics last Thursday night against the Buccaneers. That is Kirk Cousins. I feel like the thing about Kirk Cousins is that they found a rhythm for him in which he can play comfortable and competent football. Yes, I still have concerns about how he's going to look when he's pressured a little bit more, because he still kind of plays with the timidity of someone coming off an Achilles injury. But at the end of the day, he still is very much a guy who can play that game manager role for you. He's not the sexiest option at the QB position by any means necessary, but he's going to get the job done if you give him the surroundings and the circumstances to succeed in this system. And he's going to go against the Panthers, who have improved under Andy Dalton, but he can improve the defense, which still remains one of the weakest in the NFL. And Kirk Cousins is going to be willing to exploit that. He's going to be someone who can diagnose their coverages, say, okay, I'm not going to take that many deep shots, but I will if they give them to me, and play smart football. And that's what you want out of a guy like Kirk Cousins at this stage in his career. And for a Falcons team that just needs a guy who can distribute the ball comfortably to their myriad number of weapons that they have at their disposal. And so the reason being for him hitting the over is because I just feel like he's now becoming a guy you can constantly rely on in many facets of the fantasy and betting world. So I'm picking over 241.5 yards and minus 137. And I think it will be an easy hit for you to start this week. So starting off pretty easy, pretty light with my first prop bet here. The second one, a little bit of an ambitious one, maybe not as much as of a long shot as people think, is Andre enters the chat. Welcome, my man. But Caleb Williams, as Andre's saying, big game for Seattle tonight. I am in between dreading it and hoping that they can pull out the win, but it is a massive game at home for the Seattle Seahawks, as Andre said, perfect window for you guys to beat the Niners. And I agree, but there just feels something about our injuries that feel more significant than the Niners. I feel like you can't account for a whole entire defensive line meant to stop the run game being injured. And the 49ers rotating in and out of their running game like it's the easiest thing on planet Earth. As Andres, I think you guys can win, but you have to stop the run. That's exactly the game plan that I feel needs to be set out. And if we don't execute that, then this could be, in my humble opinion, a blowout. I still respect our offense highly, as Andres had so many injuries. No Woolen and the linebackers are cooked. I agree with that sentiment as well. Almost at every single level of the defense, you can find significant injuries that impact Seattle. But on the offense side of the ball, I feel like they can find ways to make this respectable. As Andre also says, this is probably a bounce-back game for the Niners realistically, though. I agree. But in terms of keeping it close, I realistically feel as if the Seattle offense can. It's going to be all about establishing their run game specifically, because Kenneth Walker, I feel, is the most integral part of the puzzle of the Seattle offense. When he's playing and he's on. But at the end of the day, I just feel like the 49ers, this is a get-right game for them. And they just have less injuries than us at this point. We might be able to get them down the road. We're fully healthy, but not right now. Going back to this Caleb Williams prop bet here. This is going to be a frustrating one to kind of justify because of the fact, as Andre also says, I think K9 is a monster game. He does tend to have big games against bigger opposition, but at this point, I just want to see, the Seattle offense play a perfect game, which is something that they can't necessarily do against certain teams. And he says the question is, does he get 15 plus touches? That's the big thing. I think that if he doesn't, then it spells trouble, because as much as I love Geno and what he's done this season, he can't carry the burden of this entire offense. But who knows? But getting back into this Caleb Williams prop bet here, I feel like the frustrating nature of it is that I feel like it's not necessarily going to be as much one step forward, two steps back for Caleb, as much as it's going to be going through certain learning pains. And this is a tougher game than people think against a Jags team that, is kind of still in that worst team tier in the NFL, but can find ways to, frustrate you, especially defensively. And Caleb, not for nothing, is someone who I appreciate seeing the growth patterns throughout his first couple of starts, but this certainly feels like one of those trap games where all of that progress kind of go away. And so I'm going to say he's going to hit the under in this game at 234.5 at minus 110. So take that with a grain of salt, because some people might point to his past performances and showing his signs of improvement in each of them. But I feel at this point, this feels like a Bears offense that still has a lot to go through before we can really justify saying we've seen the real Caleb Williams these past couple of weeks. And then the next one I want to go over is another kind of weird one as well, especially with the coaching change. But Breece Hall. Breece Hall going up on Monday night against the Bills with a new head coach, an interim head coach in Jeff Ulbrich, and questions surrounding the offense. I feel like he will be the biggest X factor. As Andre says, Jags defense does suck, though. I feel like they do, but in many ways, they are more opportunistic than you think. Let's not forget that to start the season, they did hold Miami with Tua healthy to 20 points and only one really big play. And yes, we can point to their absolutely atrocious performances against the Bills, but this feels like a weird game for me to diagnose and say that Caleb will look either good or look bad, much like he did to start the season. So that's why I feel like Caleb will struggle in this game. I don't necessarily think he's going to play bad, but it's just not going to show up in the stat sheet what he's going to be able to do in this game, if that makes sense. But in the Breece Hall side of things, I feel like he has to be the X factor going forward in this Jets offense. He has to be the difference maker. And at over 51.5 yards and minus 137, I feel like that's a bargain bet. I feel like that's a bargain for ambitious bettors, because Breece Hall, I feel like you have to get going to get Aaron Rodgers going, because that's the equation that I feel best works moving forward for the Jets. As Andre says, I think Caleb has a better chance to throw 2 touchdowns than hit his yards prop. And I agree, because he has been consistent in finding the end zone over the past couple of weeks. Let me be clear in that. But I just feel like in terms of stat-wise, he's just been so erratic, and we can't predict what he's been able to do. And I just feel like his abilities best show up in the small things and the details of the game instead of, the yardage totals and the touchdown totals. So yeah, that's why I think it's a weird prop bet and a weird game to bet on in general. But the next one I want to go over before we head to a quick break, I had some others, is J.K. Dobbins, because I've been singing this guy's praises to start the season. He's going up against a surprisingly decent Broncos defense right now after a bye. And I just feel like, the Chargers are the weirdest team to have a bye early in the season, because we can't really gauge their progress under Harbaugh. We can't really gauge if his philosophies have set in, right? And also with all the injuries to Herbert and things of that nature, we can't really trust the fact that this offense is something that could be sustainable. So J.K. Dobbins, though, is still someone who is a difference maker for the Chargers. He's going to get the ball more often than not. And over 57.5 yards and minus 137. That's a bargain. And the last 2 bets, I'll go through them very quickly. Amon-Ra St. Brown going up against the Cowboys, under 77.5. He's having a very up and down season. I don't know why, but I still hold the highest regard for him. And then Rome Odunze will hit the over, actually, in turn. Instead of, Caleb Williams hitting his over at over 34.5 yards at minus 130. I think you'll have at least 1 or 2 big plays in this game. I feel like Caleb will start to trust him a little bit more, especially in the red zone, rather than, just focus on developing his rapport with DJ Moore, because I think it's that rapport with DJ Moore is very important. But I feel like Rome Odunze and him understand each other a little bit more than, say, Caleb and DJ Moore. And Andre's going, I agree the Lions are going to be pounding the run game all day. Absolutely. And who wouldn't against that Cowboys front, because it's atrocious. One of the worst run Ds in the entire NFL. So I completely agree with that sentiment. I feel like the Lions just find so many ways to beat you that they don't really need to worry about Amon-Ra's production with any sense of urgency. It's just that that's the way it is right now for the Lions. If they run the football, I feel like they have the best chance of winning, and they're the best chance of being perhaps the best team in the NFC that way. So I completely agree with that. But we do have to take a quick break, unfortunately. And when we come back on the other side, we transition from prop bets in the NFL to general bets in college football. Should be a crazy week in that kind of field. We'll be right back after this short break.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.